little bit today about one of my favorite cheeses and also my favorite cocktail, and thought I'd pair the two of them. So my name is Britton Welsh with Beehive Cheese. I have been a cheesemaker at Beehive for about 15 years. One day my dad and my uncle got this crazy idea to start a cheese company out in northern Utah, and the kids came along for the ride. So obviously I love cheese, otherwise I wouldn't have been in it for so long. So the cheese that we're going to be doing today is called Barely Buzzed. So this is our cheddar style cheese. And then the beautiful thing about it, and we'll get into it a little bit later, is you can see here the rind on this cheese. So the base is a really smooth, creamy Utah cheddar with the coffee and the lavender in the rind. So as it ages, it's going to get a lot of flavor infused deep into the cheese. So my philosophy with this cocktail is first and foremost to confess that I am not a cocktail expert, but I love flavor and I love trying new things. So my philosophy in making these cocktails is going to be trying to craft something that'll complement that rich coffee flavor in the cheese, but also to complement some of those lighter lavender notes. So my go-to cocktail, and what I will have at 5 o'clock after an interesting day of shipping holiday cheeses to folks, would be the Manhattan. So what I've got here is a beautiful Basil Hayden's dark rye. So this one I picked because first and foremost, it's going to be a lot more bold and kind of rich than your traditional rye that you would use when making a Manhattan. So this is made with a blend of 2 whiskeys, so a Kentucky straight rye, as well as a Canadian rye. And then they put a little bit of port into it as well. So that's going to open it up really nicely. So by pairing the espresso, that Turkish grind of espresso, in the coffee rind, I feel like that's pulling out a lot of that richness. And then complementing that in making the Manhattan, instead of simply using normal bitters, I am going to use a little bit of the lavender bitters. So again, just trying to pull out a little more of that lavender in the cocktail to create, or the lavender in the base of the cheese, to try and create a really unique flavor. So let's go ahead, and again, I am not a bartender. There should be a little disclaimer at the bottom of the screen. So I've got my best friend when I'm making cocktails in the kitchen, my dish rag that's going to prevent me from trying to make too much of a massacre here. So first, I am going to get my cocktail shaker, and then the second thing I'm going to get from the freezer is the freshly frosted glass. So I'm going to add just a little bit of ice. This is about a handful and a half of ice to the shaker, and then put in about 2 ounces of the rye. So there's 1 ounce and a 2nd ounce of the rye. I'm going to put in 1 ounce of vermouth. So put the vermouth in there, hit it with 1 dash of Angostura bitters. That's going to give it a little bit more body and kind of savoriness. And then hit it with 1 dash of the lavender bitters. So go ahead and get my cocktail spoon and get that mixed up nicely. And this is going to be the perfect base. So one thing I love about making cocktails is you can custom craft anything in there. So I'm going to take 1 second and kind of share my inspiration of what my 2020 quarantine has been. And it is a book I got off Amazon. So this is called the Cocktail Codex, made by some really crazy bartenders out of, I believe, New York and Chicago. So why I love this book is you have these beautiful full-size pictures, and they boldly proclaim that there are 6 different types of cocktails. So what I've been doing going through quarantine is tasting through each of the 6 cocktails and the variations on those 6 bases that create all of the cocktails that we know and love. So today we ventured into the martini family. So the reason I love this book is it's going to give you a base, and then throughout the chapter it goes into, okay, here's different variations you can try on that. Try some different syrups, or try maybe a little bit more acid in your various drink, or a little more bitter. So you can kind of discover your own personal preferences that make one kind of an amateur cocktail aficionado in the house. So now that we've got our base, what we're going to do here is strain it into my coupe That's my favorite type of glass to drink from. All right. So got the base in there. And then my favorite thing about cocktails is the ability to finish it and craft that. So that's, in my opinion, what's going to make the kicked up margarita, or the margaritas are next. We're going to do the kicked up Manhattan. So I've got my lemon rind here, just a small peel of lemon, and I'm going to take that and express it over the top, get some of those aromatics in there, and then put a little on the rim, let it swim in there. And then what I decided to do about a day in advance is get some sour dark cherries that are in syrup, and I have put those in vodka and lavender, just some lavender flowers overnight. So I'm going to take that. You can kind of see it here with some of the actual lavender flowers that have been hanging out with the cherries. I'm going to add that in there, which is going to make the perfect garnish. So with that now, kind of the mentality of cheese. So I've got my pairing here. Got my freshly made Manhattan that smells incredible. And I can actually see kind of like a little oil slick, those beautiful lemon zests just kind of hanging out on the top of it. I wish I had a camera that was strong enough to see that. So my philosophy with pairing, and it's going to be a little different, unlike wine and cheese, or maybe like beer and cheese that are going to do a little more of the work for you. It's important for me to bring out the cheese well in advance, so it has time to come to room temperature. The cheese has an opportunity to really start releasing some of those aromas and the volatiles that you don't get with a piece of cheese fresh out of the fridge. So I've got my warmed up cheese here. I'm gonna have a small bite, kind of let it coat my mouth, and then finish it with the cocktail. And if this goes according to how I practiced it, it should taste pretty darn good. So again, I'm letting the cheese kind of open up in my mouth and really fill all of the parts of my mouth. And then get to know the cocktail with your nose. Hello there. Okay, that turned out better than it did when I practiced. So I am okay with that. What I'm tasting here and some of the things I'm going to kind of try to go for, and then as you start crafting your custom cheese cocktail pairings, you can check out. But I really love the compliment there. The sweetness, this would be the perfect dessert. A nice Manhattan with a barely buzzed would knock it out of the park. Get any really strong cheddar in there. The sweetness of it's going to complement that nicely. And then kind of the lavender with the flavored lavender in the cheese works really well. So with that being said, I am really excited to get on to our next pairing, unless Michael, if you have any questions before we move on. But there's my take at cocktail pairing.
Britton, that was amazing. I really love the research that you did with the amount of, different variations that you can do. I did a class just recently online about changing recipes by just changing the cheese. And you can take that recipe there and add in some additional flavors and have some fun stuff with that. So that was really cool. I really appreciate the depth of work that you went into that. So that looks like fun.
Had a lot of fun, and it tastes good.
So how long have you been quarantining?
Since probably March, kind of hanging out.
That's nice. That's nice. So alcohol delivery service then?
Socially distant trips to the store, followed by just kind of being responsible. So maybe a little more socially distant than proper quarantine, but nothing a good cocktail can't make better.
I agree with that. Absolutely.